Assalamu alaikum. Living organisms do not live forever. Some live for many years and others for few days. A living organism does not need reproduction to survive, but as a species, they need that for continuity. Like all other living organisms, plants must reproduce to continue their species by replacing those that die. In this lecture, we will learn about reproduction in plants. So here we will discuss this topic in three sections. First of all, structure of a flower, then fertilization, and after that pollination. Before starting the reproduction in plants, let's recall parts of a flower. Most plants have root, stem, and leaf. These are called vegetative part of a plant. Flower is the reproductive part of a plant. Now let's discuss about the main parts of a flower. The first part that is highlighted over here is petal. The purpose of petals are to attract bees and other insects. That's why they are brightly colored. The second part that is highlighted over here is sepal. The role of sepal is to protect the unopened flower. Next part of a flower is stamen. Stamen is the male reproductive part of flower. Stamen consists of two important parts known as anther and filament. First of all, anther. Anther is generally yellow in color and carries pollen. It is held by a thread known as filament. The next part of a flower is carpel. Carpel is the female reproductive organ of a flower. Carpel consists of three main parts known as stigma, style, and ovary. Stigma is the sticky tip of a carpel which traps and holds pollen grains. Style is a tube-like structure which connects stigma to the ovary. Ovary contains the ovule, and ovules are the female reproductive cells of a plant. So these are the main parts of a flower. Now let's discuss about pollination. Pollination is commonly defined as the process of pollen transfer from anther to stigma of a flower. We have already discussed that anther is a part of stamen which is a male reproductive organ and it carries pollen. On the other hand, stigma is the part of carpel which is the female reproductive organ, and we have already discussed that stigma is sticky due to which pollens stick to the stigma. So, transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as pollination. Pollen grains is usually carried either by insects or by wind. First, we will discuss about pollination by insects. Insects that carries pollen grains are known as pollinators. As shown in the diagram, pollinator visit flower to collect nectar, and nectar is a sugary solution. Insects collect it for their food. While collecting the nectar, pollen grains stick to the pollinators, and when pollinator move to another flower, it transfers that pollen grains to the stigma of that flower. In this way, pollen grains are transferred by insects from one flower to another flower. Now, pollination by wind. Pollen grains are very small and lightweight. They can easily be carried by air currents and can travel from anther to stigma. There are two types of pollination, self-pollination and cross-pollination. First type is cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma between two flowers, and these two flowers are not on the same plant. That means that one flower is on one plant and the second flower is on another plant. When pollen grains are transferred between these two flowers, this is known as cross-pollination. Second type is self-pollination. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma take place within the same flower or between two different flowers of the same plant. Pollination is followed by fertilization. Pollen grains present on the stigma start moving towards the ovary through pollen tubes, and join up with ovules present in ovary. That process of joining pollen grains to the ovule is known as fertilization.